We are back with another episode and we're going to get straight into it. We're going to go into a bit of a deep dive here. We're going to be looking at what the famous content creators are doing and how they're driving revenue for their DTC brands. We'll be looking at Mr. Beast with Feastables. We'll be looking at Chris Williamson with Neurotonic. Or is it Neutronic? I can't pronounce it. Neurotonic, thank God. Newtonic. And thirdly, Emma Chamberlain with... It's Chamberlain Coffee, yeah? You can tell I planned that. But anyway, authentic and off the cuff, as you know, that's how we run it on this pod. So, Carson, first of all, what's our feelings? What are we excited for to cover in your head?
Dude, I'm excited to kind of break down and go into what each of their YouTube styles and how those individual styles carry over into how they advertise their brand and what people can take from it. Because I think each of them does one thing really well, and it's something that people can kind of take and conglomerate into their own to find out either A, what they do really well, or B, get better at something that they might not be good at.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think for people that are listening to this pod, I think for this episode, the big learnings and I think key takeaways will be A, how do we get that top of funnel attention? Because the game is, how can we get as many eyeballs at the top? And then finally, you'll get some that are in the buying mood, right? And I think they are so important to look at, these content creators, because they all do it in a different way. And I think it's important to have a mix and match approach, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're really cool to start with Mr. Beast. I think this guy, I mean, first of all, he's in a bit of trouble at the moment, isn't he? Due to his most recent stunt by putting someone in a room. But I think there's learning there. I think he's willing to experiment, right? Mm-hmm. He has such a threshold for experimentation and kind of failure, but he learns what works and he doubles down on it, right? I think that's so important. Do you agree?
I agree. And I think for him, it comes down to he's not afraid to test one crazy shit, to really get people's attention. And he's constantly doing new and exciting things that people are like, I have to watch this. How does this end? I think there's that. And then one thing I want to point out from the get-go about Mr. Beast is his hook is everything. He tells you, he doesn't do an intro hey, what's up guys, Mr. Beast, welcome back to the channel. He doesn't do any of that. It's immediately when you get into the video, he tells you what it's about and leaves you with a curiosity gap so that you're going to be able to figure out and solve the mystery at the end. You're not, and his thumbnails are ad level headlines. He does all this stuff to really get people to, he's a master of it, right? He is a master of attention and getting people to click and watch the video. Yeah. Because he gives you exactly what you're going to get from the get-go. There's no sugarcoating it. It's just straight to the point. And I think people like the no BS thing, and they like the suspense of what's going to happen next.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think there's a really important learning to be had there of really think, would I watch this? Or would I look at this? Or have that as your own personal litmus test. I think that's so. I think Mr. Beast, he is, again, I think he lives very much in not my philosophy, but I really look up to his philosophy, of how you should approach creative testing, how you should be approaching, essentially advertisement. And look at his thumbnails. If you look at how fast those thumbnails will change, right? He's always iterating. And I think that is so important when you look at advertisement now.
Yeah.
It's interesting with the clients that we work with, we see they want more scale and they want faster iteration cycles. I'm intrigued for you, Carson, across the pond. Is that something you're feeling as well?
Yeah, it is. And it's something too that the more you go into the testing realm, you start to realize that there's so many different ways to say things and perform, do things, right? Whether it's angles, whether it's messaging, whether it's design, whether it's format, whatever it might be, testing is just this big pond that has so many different types of fish. And, the fish are your testing. The fish are basically how you're testing, right? So you're going into all of your testing by trying different stuff. Otherwise, you're just going to get weeded out, right? Yep. That's why he tests so much, because he wants to find the best version of what's going to work and continue to iterate off that. And one thing going back to the hook stuff is not only does he get right into it, but he promises a lot of value up front and a huge payoff, right? So he raises the stakes, as I like to say. He's giving you this is what this person has to do or what they're gonna do in order to win $1 million or $10,000 or whatever the number is, right? There's stakes to it and there's a value for people to keep watching, which is what creates more of the curiosity. And I'm curious too, Luke, your thoughts on his A to B testing strategy.
Yes.
Do you think for him Do you think the most important A/B tests he runs is thumbnails or headlines?
See, I think first of all, I think that's a really good question. I think actually, and this is where I think a lot of people go wrong in static ads, and I think there's learnings that can cross-pollinate, is the visual and the headline, because a thumbnail is very visual, right? Mm-hmm. They've got to be communicating with each other, right? Either the title adds the curiosity, and then the thumbnail reinforces it, or the vice versa, right? So I think actually, when you're A/B testing, especially with statics and especially with thumbnails, it's taking them both under consideration. Yeah, I know that's a bad answer, but that's kind of how I approach it. So it's like, for example, is the headline, okay, let's say the headline is the curiosity part, right? What's the thumbnail's job? Okay, from that point of view, then it should be to reinforce the headline, right? Yep. And I think we see it all the time, right? You'll see lots of static ads where you're like, that headline doesn't make any sense.
No,
Visual format it's been placed in. It's just like, what?
It's like, well, it goes back to like congruency is king. You know, content obviously is the first driver, but if you don't have congruency, it's not going to make sense, right? It needs to be congruent to the brand, it needs to be congruent to the image, the headline, all of it. It all has to like flow together. Yeah. It is your ads, especially in statics, are an organism, and each part does something to be able to make the whole thing work, right?
No, yeah,
I think especially for when it comes to, I think YouTube's a great way to kind of show people the value of this, but this is how I think about it in ads and how I think Mr. Beast especially does it well on YouTube. Your thumbnail is what gets people to stop the scroll. And in advertising, that's your design, like your image, your format, whatever it might be. And your headline or copy, whatever, is what gives people the information to say, this is for me, or this is something I want. And he does that super well by always making it, the headline is something relevant to whatever the visual is that gives you, context and really sticks out on the feed. But he makes it so that it's congruent. Like there's no discrepancy between a question of, okay, this is a video about somebody, has to escape a fire in a house, and the headline is just, somebody has to water down the house. Like, you know what I mean? That was not a great example, but you get it, right?
I get it. And I think, I hope I'm not going too much of a tangent here, but I think what we're really trying to knuckle down or really emphasize for the listeners especially in the Mr. Beast part of this episode is, he's very much clarity over cleverness, right? I remember you saying that earlier in the episode. I think what's very clear, right, is, and again, this is why it goes back, that's why it's so great for cross-pollination here is, would you say your ad to a stranger? And imagine that you'd written your ad out and you had it in your hand. Would you read that to a stranger? If not, then it's right? And I think what's really interesting for me is if you look at kind of, you've got to have and that's what we talked about in the previous episode, why ideas matter actually more than effort. If you look at one of his videos, right? I remember I was listening to a podcast he was on, and he was saying how he did one video where he was lying in a coffin for 7 days, right? And he took that and then did it again, but him in a bathtub. One went viral, the other one didn't, right? So ideas do matter. But I think how I would take that a step further is I would say, actually, if you can test earlier on as quickly as possible before you actually put all that money behind that ad, then it's going to save you A, time, A, money, and B, effort, Yeah. And I also think what I'm a big fan of with Mr. Beast is he's very good at understanding contrast will drive the clicks. So let's look at it. If we broke it down, Carson, right now, look at his fundamental videos, right? It's cheap versus expensive. It's survival versus comfort. It's win versus lose, right? So what's that in the static form? It's before versus after, wrong versus right, problem versus solution, right? As you were saying, if you have the stakes up front, people will then care.
Yeah, creates the tension. And I think that's a great point to point out for what he does really well too, is the contrast part, right? He creates tension, he creates contrast. It's this thing versus this thing, or day 1 versus day 30. It's always, there's something that gets people's attention through tension, right? One thing I think also that Mr. Beast has going for him is a lot of reciprocity, because he is very outwardly generous with money and giveaways and doing things for people. And I think that creates a lot of goodwill for him that translates into the businesses, right? Like Feastables, Beast Burger, all that stuff. I think there's some sort of reciprocity going on. Whereas like, he just did the giveaway or the donation stuff for people in Africa. Like that generated a lot of donations because he did a live stream and all this other stuff. I think that's another thing too that brands can take away is like give so much value even in your ads. Like give people information. If you're in the supplement game, do a carousel of like, this is I just did it this week, actually. I did a ad for a carousel for a LASIK company. And what we did was create reciprocity through telling them, these are the questions you need to ask your doctors before getting LASIK. And at the very end, we did a call to action that says like, ready to see if this is right for you. And from there, it's like, I expect that ad probably to do the best because it's giving so much more to people and giving people information that they can then take and know what they're doing more, right? It's just, you want to be able to give value.
I think that's really key. I think Mr. Beast does that very well. And I think actually it's something that I feel like, as you said, right, it's, sometimes, you may, for example, like your customer could come to you, let's say in the digital space, they may not be ready to buy, but when they are ready to buy, you want to be top of mind. Giving that value away, saying, look, if you're not ready for our supplements, you shouldn't be taking them, but here's the questions you should be asking your doctor, they'll remember that. They'll remember that kindness, and then eventually, at some point down the funnel, they will put their money to your business. So I think what's also interesting as well, I think we love to talk about this, Mr. Beast is a very big believer in the kind of the rule of 100, right? And just for the listeners who don't understand the rule of 100, it's the belief of, even at the beginning, realistically, your videos will be crap. Like there will be a point where they won't be as good as you think, but after doing it 100 times, you'll work out what the top 10% are of those 100, and then you iterate on those. I think there's a good lesson there. I think there's a lesson of being consistent. I think Mr. Beast does that very well. Yeah. So with advertising,
I think that's the same thing with this podcast.
Yeah, we're going to do 100 of these, and look, we know very much at the Ad Fellas, right? We know that the first 100 will not be special, but I can guarantee that the next 100 will be better because we'll know what works and what doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
You get used to our voices because we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But talking about being aspirational and having some clarity, Chris Williamson, he is very good at what he does, and I'll tell you why I like his approach, because he understood the podcast game, right? And I know you and I don't dabble much in the video ad game. I mean, you do more than me, I think, right? You dabble more in video. But it's like, what's a big format? The podcast style format. Because there's trust in the podcast. Chris Williamson's podcast, Modern Wisdom, is incredible, right? For many different reasons. But the products he sells to his audience are things they'd be interested in, right? Dating, discipline, status, etc. Right? So, I mean, Carson, first of all, what do you think of his productivity drink? What's your views on it?
I haven't tried it personally, but yeah, I have not. I want to. I need to order some. But one thing I think that from the get-go I want to point out about Newtonic and Chris Williamson and Modern Wisdom, like his podcast is very centered around how you can like understand yourself and human psychology and evolution and improve certain aspects of your life, right? Like the focus part or being more productive or how you think about yourself, whatever. All that stuff that falls under the umbrella. And I think the drink fits very well into what he talks about because it's like the drink that's going to make you productive and it's going to make you focus and it's going to help you get through your day with a good amount of caffeine, whatever, and not have to crash and do all this other stuff. I think it fits very well into the congruency of his brand and the Modern Wisdom brand. And that's something like we just touched on with Mr. Beast, but I think Chris does it probably even a little bit better. And he doesn't shove it down your throat when it comes to advertising it. All right. It's not like in your face. This is my brand. Go buy it. Sure, he promotes it, but I wouldn't say he's over the top about it. One thing too that and I want to get your take on this after, but I think he does a great job of borrowing trust and credibility.
Yes.
Because he's got such a big podcast and he's got all of these famous people coming on who are drinking the drink and all of them have great things to say about it. Now, given they're on their like his podcast and stuff, but he's always like, if it's shit, like tell me. And they're always like, this is really good. Right. So he uses that too on the podcast side to really leverage himself and the business up. And it's a very not high intellect podcast, but it's kind of one of those things you listen to and it's more of the upper echelon of, what you're talking about. more advanced stuff like human psychology and evolution and all that stuff. But I think the Newtonic part of that really goes into it because it's helping you be more productive and focus and increase your own intellect. But like, I'm going to pass it over to you. Like, one, what are your thoughts on that? And two, like, what else did I miss?
I mean, first of all, I don't think you missed anything. No glazing, I promise. But like, I think what he does well, and you've touched on it perfectly, is essentially it's halo effect. It's how can I have conversations with people where being kind of recognized around them increase my kind of trust, right? I mean, it's quite a cynical way of looking at it, but it is a great way of doing trust building. I think what he does very well is if he can hold audience, let's say on this podcast with his long form storytelling that he does so well, then he will then also be able to draw them in the short form. Right, and I think as well. I know they just raised recently as well with their, and I know it's him and James Smith that are building that brand together. But it's very exciting because, and this is what they did very cleverly. And I think again, if you are a content creator and you've got a big following and you are thinking of making a brand, make sure the brand is an extension of you as a person. Right? Yeah. Because you actually feel the sense of personality within their brand. That's something that I've always felt with that. Like when I look at their stuff, I always think their tongue-in-cheek approach is in it, right? But it's interesting. I'm intrigued. Like for you, what was your favorite episode of Modern Wisdom? Do you have one?
He has some great ones. I love every single one with Rory Sutherland because they talk about like all the stuff I'm interested in, like dumb questions, little nuanced things that people don't think about. So anything with Rory, anything with the George Mack episodes are great. It's kind of similar. Alex Hormozy, obviously. One nice. I just watched recently was the John Deloney episode. Okay. Yeah, that one was really good. There's a ton. I'm a big fan of that podcast. Probably the one I listen to the most. But one thing I want to go back to for a second is his storytelling ability.
Oh, let's go.
What can people take from Chris's storytelling ability to be able to do in their own ads? Because if you've watched any of his with James, they do a great job of telling a story and making something very much so like congruent to what they're trying to advertise. They had one recently with their new flavor.
Strawberry lemonade.
Yeah, strawberry lemonade is like the detective one.
Yes.
Like Miami Vice feel. It was unreal. I loved it. I would be interested to see how that performed. But I want to like really break down this part of things because I think there's a lot to unpack with the storytelling ability that Chris has. And whether he came up with that or not, it still plays into his ability as a storyteller with his podcast.
Yeah.
To be able to convey the value and really like break down this is what happened and why and all that stuff.
Yeah. It's an interesting one to me because I think it's what he does very well with his storytelling, and I think brands should definitely steal, is, again, very similar to Mr. Beast. It's, in a way, when the world... Again, we talk about the importance of 3 seconds. And this is also an important takeaway as well. Because he's well-known, he can get away with it. But actually taking care in what you're doing... I know it sounds really stupid to say that, but like they've spent time on the budget. Not budget, they've used the budget for the actual set. They've used... It's very deliberate what they've done. Right? Because what they've said is, right, okay, so we're making a productivity drink. What story could we tell that is kind of adjacent to productivity? Well, Miami Vice, right? That was a cultural they took a cultural insight and they made it into an ad that people would enjoy, and they have, like the outfits, the whatever. So I think attention to detail is so important. Like their outfits are perfect, pink and yellow, exactly the same as their drink coming out, right? What do you think from that?
I agree. And one thing too for them is the storytelling is a lot of getting people to relate and care, whether it's in the podcast or it's the ad that we just talked about with the new flavor. It's relatable and people can see themselves, and I think that's the beauty of the storytelling aspect, right? That does a great job of really immersing people in like, this is you, this is what you struggle with, here's how you can fix whatever problem you have or whatever goal you want to reach. That's a big thing. But kind of shifting gears now to Emma Chamberlain.
Ooh.
What are some things you think she has done and does really well? Because I've got mine, but I would love to hear yours first.
I think Emma Chamberlain is... I think it's interesting, right? I think especially female content creators, they're very good at that kind of relatability and that belonging, right? I think what she does really well, I think companies should really tap into, is that, show the messy kind of human side, right, of life, and also the product you're making. I think that is something that I think she does really well. And I think also it's interesting how someone has so much cultural capital, and I feel like if you can understand, okay, how do I show myself to be human? Now, I know we're firing buzzwords out left, right, and centre, but just to make a really simple tactical breakdown, to get rid of, me just saying be authentic and be culturally, relevant, is actually just, what do my audience care about? What are the questions they're asking on Reddit, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat even? Understand their frustrations in the question and answer it in an authentic way. Like, that is such a simple tactical breakdown, right?
Yep.
Because I don't know what your views on this, Carson, and something that I'm trying to avoid now is when you go to these conferences. Well, I was at a conference last week, right? And you have some main speaker come up there going, you need to be really authentic. What does that mean? What does that mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, be authentic. Like, where's the tactical breakdown? What does that, So I think, and it's something that why I love what we're building at, at the Ad Fellas, is because not only are we going to hit you with some of the buzzwords, of course, because who doesn't love a good buzzword, is we're going to actually really try and give you tactical advice, right? Do that, do this, don't do that, you know what I mean? Do you agree?
I'm gonna jump in real quick and break down into this authenticity for a second, because I think this is a great way to take a tactical point from the authenticity buzzword everybody's talking about right now.
Yeah.
Authenticity is just being the same person in public that you are in private. So if you have to change who you are when you're around other people, and of course, like, this is different because when you're a different person around your friends than you are your wife or your girlfriend or your mom or your dad, but it's being like truly yourself in whatever setting and not changing like the core identity of who you are, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what authenticity is. If you want to break it down to its most basic level, it's just being the same person in public that you are in private.
But I think in my opinion, it's interesting, right? I think you're right. It's actually having a point of view, which may sound a bit counterproductive, because I think so many people go online, and again, look, we're not superstars yet, but one day. Depends on the, but it's like, the power of yet. Meghan Markle knew that best. Anyway, but I think it's important to understand, like, having a point of view is really important, right? And I think, don't get me wrong, there are I think I look at life in battles and hills. No, wars and battles, there we go. And what I mean by that is, it's like, there'll be certain battles I'll have, let's say we're talking about a funnel with a client, and they're like, we want it this way. And I'm like, like, that isn't the battle that I want to, like, that isn't the hill I want to die on, right?
Yeah.
But there are certain things that are non-negotiable. So I think that's authenticity to me. It's, what are your non-negotiables in life? Be kind.
Boundaries.
Have boundaries. Like,
How do you think Emma Chamberlain does that well?
I feel like with Emma Chamberlain, what she does really well is the content, when she's doing the short form, you just feel, again, you can feel it, right? There's just some conscious feeling there. You feel that is genuine, that is someone being genuine about what they love doing, right? Coffee was an extension of herself, right? And I think that's it. It's, like, for example, when you buy a product, you can feel when something's been built carelessly, right? You can feel it. You just know, right? So I think that's my answer for Emma Chamberlain. You just know that someone, like, it may sound really stupid, but like, when you look at Emma Chamberlain, it's like she built that brand, like she was in the bedroom with you, not in that connotation. But you know what I mean, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you feel like she's talking to you as a friend, like having a sleepover.
Yeah. Again,
Again, not in that connotation. But you know what I'm trying to say, right? It's very hard to use those metaphors, but you know what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah. It's and another thing too, I think, going back to and off of the relatability aspect, she sells the lifestyle and identity, right? And we've talked about that before on other episodes, is you need to be selling the vision of what people want to either be or how they see themselves, right?
Yeah.
So she very much sells her coffee through her lifestyle, and it was a big part of her YouTube lifestyle, right? Like, she always had a coffee in hand, and she was like, I'm going to do this for myself. Like, I love coffee. I drink it all the time, whatever. Yeah. But she does a great job of, like, making it part of your identity and her identity. And it's the lifestyle that she lives that is what people pull in. And I think those are, like, very important points to not miss, because, we've talked about it before, in clothing and food.
Yes.
And really everything. You want to sell the lifestyle of how people are going to live and how they want to live, and the identity of who they are or who they want to be.
Yeah. And, and going back to that lifestyle kind of tangent that we're going on in this angle, it's, I think what Emma Chamberlain does really well is, I think she understood at the beginning of her career, that word of mouth is a very important channel, right? Mm-hmm. And I think what was interesting, I read a article talking about Emma, and she was saying how her whole approach is, how can we get as many cans into as many people's hands as possible? Because her belief is that people are walking around with not cans, sorry. If they're walking around with kind of her coffee, and you know it's her coffee, and they see the packaging, they see it, and their friends are talking about it, right? It's free distribution, you know. Yeah. I mean, look, my favorite story about kind of looking at distribution in this way is look at the Michelin brothers, right?
Yeah.
Their whole belief was, right, how can we make advertisement and marketing around wheels? Well, first of all, or tyres, sorry. I mean, no one cares about tyres. But they made people care about tyres because they made the Michelin guide, right? Mm-hmm. They said, how can we get people to do more travelling? But we'll make a Michelin guide of the fanciest restaurants and hotels.
If anybody has not read up on the Michelin story, you need to, after this podcast, of course, go read on it and observe, just like dissect like how they did it and what they did that was so important, because they broke it down into something that's not even about tires. There's nothing to do with that brand that's about tires, and how they really took it to the next level.
Seriously.
So go read up on that and kind of digest what they did and how they did it.
Yeah,
I think that's very important. But going into like, do you think there's a balance between something that's aspirational versus something that's relatable? And I'll dive a little bit into that just so people are clear on what I mean. Is there a balance between the relatability side, like being authentic and being somebody that's, you know, people can look at and like, oh, I'm like them, and a balance between the aspirational side where I want to be like them? Do you think there's a balance there? Like, if there's a big discrepancy, do you think people kind of dislike them more, or do you think they like them less?
Look at mentorship, right, in business. And I think this is the best way to explain it. When you're starting out in your life as a businessman or a businesswoman, you look at, you want someone that's maybe 2 steps ahead of you so you can learn. And then then eventually that mentor isn't mentoring anymore because you've got, not past them, but you want someone that's now 2 stages on from the point you just got to, right? Yeah. I think that's how I look at the question you've asked me is, you know, of course the dream client is someone that buys from you since the age of 10 or maybe even younger and continues to buy. That's why Lego is such a great business. But anyway, that's a side note. And Crocs, actually. Anyway, but I think actually it's understanding, okay, don't be too far out of reach. And it's like, that's why I think some of the best advertisements sell an outcome. They sell that kind of aspirational outcome, right? You know, look at like all the supplement brands, you know, I think they're getting a bit out of hand at the moment, but a lot of them are kind of selling these kind of like lose 45 pounds in 20 days and have a 6-pack or have whatever, you know. And it's just, interestingly, it's sometimes those outcomes will never be achievable, but the fact that you can let people dream that they could get there, that's the exciting part of advertisement. It's the dream that they could get there, right? You know, of course we all dream of having a Rolls-Royce and Bentley. I mean, maybe that's not your dream, but for me it is. But anyway, but it's like it's a great thing that you can kind of dream that it's aspirational, like you could get there. I mean, the reality is a lot of people don't. I think I don't know if I've answered your question at all very well, but that's kind of how I look at it. It's sell the outcome, you know.
Yeah. And you made a great point that kind of got me thinking for a second. In advertising, with this balance, do you think there's a discrepancy between how far you are from a goal and I know that there's God, I forget the off the top of my head, but people are more inclined to act on something if it gets them closer to their goal, right? So let's say you're somebody that you've already lost, you know, you're overweight, you've lost 100 pounds.
Yes.
You haven't used anything to get there except for just working out and eating clean. Yep. But you've kind of hit a plateau. That person is more inclined to use, say, Ozempic or weight loss pills or, you know, a weight loss coach, whatever it might be. They're way more inclined to use something because they've already seen results. They just want to get over this hump, right? So do you think there is a discrepancy in other things, maybe not weight loss, where it's very similar? Like the aspirations are too far ahead to get somebody to act or to buy.
Well, I think that goes back to the fundamental of kind of top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. You know, that's why having different ads are so important. It's why you know, look, you and I are static ad machines. We don't make the same static ad the same time 100 times because it may not be. You know, some ads target different buying intent, right? Yeah. But there's no point of giving someone a discount for your product if they don't even know what the fuck you do.
Yeah.
It's like me saying 20% off, this, I don't know, piece of Lego. Well, we all know what Lego is, but that was a terrible example. But you know what I'm trying to say, right? If you didn't know what this is, and I said, look, 20% off this little figure, you'd be like, Luke, you're on something. Like, you know what I'm trying to say? So, to answer your question, I think it depends where you've got them. I think top of funnel, you should be as broad as possible, right? To kind of be like broad aspirationally, in the sense of, let's say you're on an energy drink. Right? What is the story you want to say at the top of funnel? Are you tired? Yeah, that's boring. Yeah, I'm tired. Are you tired of being tired? That's a bit fun. Or, tired of missing class, right? It's attaching that part. Like, are you tired of, studying? Are you like, why would people get an energy drink? Oh, they want to take an energy drink so that they're part of the hero's journey. So they think, if I have this energy drink, it means I'll work better, which means I'll get better grades and it'll be whatever. They'll do better. So it's taking your product and fitting it in the story. I think that's where relatability comes in. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree, and I think that fits perfectly into my next point, which is Emma Chamberlain embraces the imperfection.
Ooh,
right? In her YouTube and in ads, like even with the creators they use, they embrace the imperfection part, and I think that's okay to do. You see it with ugly ads, you see it with like the sticky notes. Like, it's okay to not have something that's perfect and fancy, right? You don't need to be the Newtonic guys who have a full production crew and a full story and script. Like, you can just set up your camera, and if you have something to say that people care about, they'll listen.
Agree. And I think actually it's a really interesting concept to me of this. How can you expand? This is why I think Emma Chamberlain's great at it. Emma Chamberlain does not talk about coffee all day, because her buyers, her customers or audience would just get bored of it. But she talks to a tribe of people in her similar age. They talk about, maybe moving house, gym routines, relationships. She really expands the story surface level, right? Because let's say, I don't know, I was a 27-year-old woman, right? And I came across Emma Chamberlain, and I didn't know who she was or what she did. And then she starts talking about her relationship that failed, let's say. I would resonate on that, not because she was tactical and calculated going, oh, this will resonate. It was actually, that's going on in her life. The authenticity that she was showing of being vulnerable, right, meant that I then became not vulnerable, I resonated to that feeling. And then when I found out she sold coffee, I was like, oh, well, I know, I need coffee. I like Emma Chamberlain, You're smirking.
She's like
You're
me.
smirking. I know that's a smirk.
She's like me. Yeah. It's all about the identity when it comes to certain parts of advertising and stuff like that. Like, I think that's such a big thing that people miss out on, is who's somebody that would connect with this.
Yeah.
And there's different people will want different things, which is why you need different psychological triggers to be able to get there, whether it's, lifestyle, identity, social proof,
status. Just go
status.
to
Yeah, like there's so many different things and that's exactly goes back to your point. Like, this is why in advertising there's top, middle, bottom of funnel.
Yeah, but it's also interesting as well. I look at okay, let's say for example we're Emma Chamberlain, right? And we are selling her coffee, and she employed us in a weird, wonderful world where we're in the joint project, which we will do one day, by the way. That will come. And she was like, how would you sell our coffee? I would be like, right, let's map it to a desire. Why do people buy coffee? Is it ritual? Is it because they want to be energy? Is it because they want energy? There's so many different reasons. Understand the desire and then expand the story of that desire. So, for example, if people love the ritual, what other parts of the world in their universe does ritual matter? Yeah. I know, could it be in their...
Taste, that's another one.
Yes.
I love coffee for the taste, less for the energy, more for the taste.
Okay, perfect. I don't know, then, like, how could you expand that story about taste? What, again, if I was like, what are the worst, like, you could do a series on what are the worst coffees, right? Yeah. And then it's like, there's so many ideas you could take that, right? But I'm just saying is understand the desire that you want to map for your customers and build from that. I think that's how I...
All the different angles, baby.
Mate, we, honestly, every angle you can think of, go mad. Again, advertising, of course. So, I mean, how are we going to conclude this episode? I think it's important to have a conclusion. I don't know. I'd love to hear what you think the conclusion is, because I may have a different one.
I think, for me, my conclusion and final thoughts would be, look at people who do something really well and try to dissect why it is they do it, what makes it good, and how you can do that, right? For Mr. Beast, we'll call it stakes and the ability to really get people hooked in, right? The outside the box stuff. For Chris Williamson, I'll dumb it down to the storytelling ability. And for Emma Chamberlain, I'll dumb it down to the lifestyle and relatability identity part. I think, like, if you can really lean into and dissect what people do really well and how that maybe fits into your skill set and get better at it and apply it to your ads, you're going to have success there. Whether it's static or video, carousel, whatever format you want to do. Like, lean into that and find out why your customers like your brand and what's going to make them buy, and how you can do something that you do well or your agency does well. Bring it into how you're performing in your ads.
Agreed. And I think kind of to add on to my conclusion here would be, understand that you can't, if you go out and copy everything they do right now, you will not be successful, because realistically, they've got the cultural resonance, they've got the depth, they've got everything, because they've already got, that social proof.
The audience.
They've got the audience. So again, that's why it's so important to, and again, it's a long game you're playing if you're building a brand. You're not going to, yes, there'll be cases where it'll be like, but this brand scale to, look at Groons, right? They're very special cases, but realistically, a lot of brands take a lot of time to build. So you're in it for the long run, so do what you actually do and love what you do. Do love what you do. And if you're making content like you and I, we love doing this, right? So we're going to be here for a long old time, and that's okay. Yeah. And I think that's the lesson I want to give for this episode. Just, be authentic to yourself. And yes, it's a buzzword. And if you have a problem with me using buzzwords, write it in the comments. I enjoy having a debate with you. But yeah, I think for next episode, I want to try something a little different. I'm not going to say what it is because we need to agree on it first.
Okay.
But yeah, be excited for next week's episode. It's going to be a bit of a corker. I have an idea.
After that, we're going to start rounding up guests, right? After episode 5.
Mate, it's guest time. Have you got who are you thinking, or do you have some lined up already?
I've got a couple of people that I'd like to have on for sure. On the paid side, on the organic side, just creative nice. Overall.
Nice.
I think there's a lot of good people I've talked to and know that'd be great. Smaller creators like us, but still like a ton of value to add, and people who've done really well.
Perfect.
So I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity to get some good guests on here for sure. We're well connected, gents.
We have some. I was gonna say we have deep pockets. We also have deep pockets, but we also have some some good connections between us. So I think we've got some exciting things. But I think what I really want to do is kind of something that we will do definitely, where the audience will send in their brands and we'll workshop ideas organically and paid. I think that'd be quite a fun thing.
That'd be a good do it.
So if you're interested in that, leave a comment and we may give that a go. Yeah. Anyway, look, it's been a pleasure. What an episode.
Always. Wow. Yeah. And if you guys know anybody that would like this podcast, the Good Ad Fellas, send it to them. Help us grow a little bit. Drop a like, a comment, subscribe. It does help the channel.
Or hate.
We're growing.
Like hate as well. Hate. Yeah. We'll respond to it. We'll make an ad about it.
We don't care. We don't care. Whatever is gonna help us grow right now. But we love doing this. We appreciate everybody watching to the end, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.